Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And today we are continuing with Aubrey and Jameela. So I guess we're going to go ahead and just get right into it. I have to stop a lot of stuff. I know for some people it bothers them, for other people it doesn't. But I kind of have to because almost everything they're saying is BS. So if you do want to watch it uninterrupted, you'll have to watch it directly because we're going to be covering a lot, I've noticed. My only other update of the day for daily January is I do think my anhedonia is going away. So I feel like it leveled up again. And I feel even better. So it seems like I'm having some kind of improvement every 2 weeks. So that's really good. And I think I'm almost ready to make that video about it. But you basically have to just stay stable with your intake and continue to work out and blah, 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 and just ignore food noise. And then voila, you go into maintenance just fine. But a lot of people don't do that. So I'll talk about that in a future video. But I just want to say it got better again. It keeps getting better. Here we are. Okay, let's go.
I can tell you from lived experience of 2 decades that this shit doesn't work and it damages you forever, damages your metabolism, your mental health, and your vital organs.
So she's talking about downsizing. That's not true. That only happens if you're going way too far with it. So there's a lot of gray area there, Jameela. There's also a huge difference between downsizing when somebody is overweight versus when somebody is, I don't know how to say it to not upset you too, but the opposite of that. There's a big difference. There's even a difference within vanity downsizing where it's harder because you're no longer overweight. So it's just more difficult. Essentially, it just requires more work. It's usually slower. However, you see a bigger difference with less. You know what I'm saying? But again, on this channel, we always advocate for doing things healthfully, staying within healthy ranges, period. Okay?
I had blood test results yesterday, Aubrey, and I've been eating properly for 6 years. I've been eating properly and dealt with my eating disorder for 6 fucking years. And I was told that I am across the board fucked and depleted and I have no proper nutrients.
So I don't necessarily believe her. Again, I take certain things with a grain of salt just because when people have the toxic ritualistic, which is what we call it on the channel, EFA by the letter D, etc., regardless of which one they're in, people lie all the time. That's one of the biggest things. So I don't know if I believe her. I think she could be lying about either one. She could be lying about the deficiencies, or she could be lying that she is out of the behavior of being overly reductive, which I think is likely the case due to a lot of the logic that she's still very clearly voicing in this podcast.
And this, that, and the other, because I have destroyed my body for so long.
6 years would be a decent amount of time for recovery. As I said, though, the one that I think is tough is probably bone. That one's tougher. So that is, teeth, bones, etc. That's harder, for sure.
That it's going to take me 10, 15 years to catch up all the damage I did. So just wanted to back that up with a little bit.
As far as nutrition, she's wrong. As far as healing the system, like I said, certain aspects, but you got to be on it. And a lot of people are not, people in the TR, they're very neglectful of their bodies. So even within recovery, it's hard to prioritize. It's hard to sit and actually prioritize your physical health, which it's kind of like telling somebody who literally would do anything not to do that to suddenly just prioritize that and make that your number one thing. It's a tough transition for people, and a lot of people don't do it very well, honestly. and you get what you give when it comes to your body. So if you are really careful, really specific, you know, in the sense of like really being intentional with nutrition, it will go faster. I don't think she is being intentional. I'm just going to say it. I think she's probably following an intuitive eating type of thing, which is not that helpful because you need to actually keep in mind your real nutrition. I will continue to use this as an example, but iron deficient anemia, for example, you're probably going to have to take supplementation. You have to be strict with it. You have to separate your foods. People don't want to do that because it's annoying. It doesn't really matter though. And you have to do it for like 6 months. Who the hell wants to do that? Who wants to take an iron pill for 6 months? I mean, even looking at like anemia forums, people are like, I don't want to, I'll just get an infusion, which is like so dumb. So dumb. But that's basically where we're at. And remember, like, as a woman, you have menstruation, so it's harder to get your iron up. So you have to be even more on it as a woman if you are currently in that phase of life. And also, too, postpartum, it's major for obvious reasons, and even within pregnancy and within breastfeeding. So a lot of women don't consider that. You have to be intentional, you know. You have to. And that's just one example of one nutrient. So you can think of somebody who's been overly reductive. They're going to have issues with every single one. And sometimes they interact with each other in a negative way. For example, iron and zinc, they will prevent you from absorbing each other. So you have to separate it. Same thing with calcium. So calcium, iron, zinc, they will interfere with each other unless if it's in a natural food. If you are supplementing, they interfere. And also some supplements are not equal to others. So I would not necessarily suggest supplementing calcium. It's better to get it in a natural form because especially calcium carbonate is really hard to absorb. So you need to make sure like it's the quality of it. It's very complicated, honestly. So, I mean, obviously I agree you don't want to be within the reductive side of the TR. Even within Hinge, people go through very long-standing reductive phases. Again, it's okay for me to take part in this behavior as long as I don't eat meat. That's a major thing within Hinge. It's okay if I take part in this behavior as long as I don't mix fat and carbs, right? People think these kind of things, so it can lead to deficiencies even within supermorbid obesity. So I myself, I had to really get my nutrition up before I could even consider downsizing. And I had to stabilize, honestly, both physically and mentally from the years of 2021 and basically a year and a half. So the year of 2021 going into 2022, I had to stabilize until around the summer of 2022. So again, they act like it takes forever. It doesn't. I almost feel like she's saying that because she's trying to like deter people from recovery, which is awful. If you are intentional, it's a lot faster than 6 years. So she's just, no. Like I said, bone, teeth, that kind of stuff, yeah, that can be tough. Okay. But if we're talking just like basic nutrient deficiencies, it does not have to take 6 years. She's not doing a good job. I'm just going to tell you. She's flopping. But again, are we surprised that she's flopping? No, because of the things she's saying. She's probably not being intentional with nutrition. Again, I don't know if she practices intuitive eating, but I don't really agree with it. I think you got to get in nutrition. You got to. You know, intuition is a wonderful thing, but so is physical reality, and we need them to work together. If you haven't had vitamin A in forever, you probably need to eat a lot of it. Okay. I mean, it's frustrating. It's just frustrating.
Yeah.
lived experience.
I'm
And it's just
sorry to hear all of it. And like, this is, I don't know, everybody gets to make their own choice. For me, that is much too high a price to pay.
yeah.
That is much too high a price to pay.
And it's an endless price.
Yeah.
It's an endless price, and no one ever tells you about that. And that kind of comes into this kind of like panic culture, right? Of like,
It's not endless. Once again, a lot of people within the TR, they really push this idea that recovery is not possible. It is possible. It can be slow if you're very severe. If you're not that severe, it's not even that slow. If you have a mild form, you could be through with it within a year or two. Or, maybe even less. Maybe you don't even get to a clinical level. You just nip it in the bud. So if you have some of these things going on, just stop it. If it's mild, don't let it get severe. Stop it now. Just stop it. Stop it now. If you're severe, fight it like hell and you will get out. It can be slow, but you will get out. You can make a full recovery, especially psychologically. Like I said, it depends on certain physical things, but it's not, you don't have to be deficient for 6 years. Like, she's just wrong. That's not true.
it doesn't matter what's going to happen to them later. We've just got to get fat people to lose weight as fast as possible. I think the Biggest Loser was one of the most damaging things that we could have seen in our culture, because you do watch people lose an astonishing amount of weight within like 7 weeks or however long the show ran. But they're exercising for 9 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I just want to quickly add, and then I will shut the fuck up. One of the many problems with that show, aside from the glorification of weight loss and the hatred of fat people and the disgusting way in which they were spoken to by the trainers, working.
I am not necessarily here to defend The Biggest Loser. I think that there were a lot of issues with it, but again, yelling and stuff within training, it's also sportsmanship. It's okay, like, to be aggressive sometimes. Like, and I'm just not buying that Jameela is never aggressive or that she's never been. It's just like, stop. Can we just stop? Like, we have to have healthy outlets for anger, especially in the TR. There's just a lot of issues with anger in the toxic ritualistic. Lots of issues with ego, lots of issues of this kind of stuff. It's like sportsmanship is a good outlet for getting some of that energy out. And I don't know, like, even me, like, I was on the Stairmaster and I was like thinking about some of my rhetoric and thinking about argumentation and these kind of things, or thinking about how Ali tried to like come at me and how I fought her back and stuff. It's like I'm on the Stairmaster and it's like I'm feeling the aggression and that kind of like energy, and it's like going through me and it feels good, even on a spiritual sense. You don't want to block it. Like, anger is not evil, it's not. It's what we do with it that can be for good or for bad. I always will advocate for constructive anger rather than destructive anger. I'll always advocate for building something up rather than tearing it down. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that there are ways to deal with anger. You can use anger to become more ambitious. Like, there are good qualities to anger. It's not always bad. So in a gym setting, that's probably one of the best places to get anger out. It's one of the safest places. It's one of the best places. Sportsmanship, doing something like kickboxing or whatever. It's a great outlet for people that I think is lacking in current society. Like, I think the world would be a better place if a lot of people took up fencing, for example. I mean, it's interesting. I even took fencing once, which I know is really random, but I took it in middle school and it was interesting. Who knows? Maybe I'll get back into it someday, but it's like part of my recovery has been accepting the fact that I like fighting at least a little bit, you know? I don't want to actually feel pain or whatever. Like, I'm not into that. But I'm just saying, like, whether it's argumentation or whether it's sportsmanship or, like I said, just the Stairmaster, you know, or challenging yourself. Because that's tough. You know, my heart rate was like 180 for 20 minutes. That was tough for me. But I enjoyed it. I really did. It was invigorating at this point in my journey because I'm healthier, so I can handle it. But I'm just saying, like, if you have those parts within you, it's okay. And I think a lot of more feminine people or women or whatever, we sometimes struggle with anger because we're told it's not ever appropriate or it's not okay or whatever. And that can be a toxic ritualistic drive. It can, of course, happen to men and masculine people as well. But I do think that there is a disproportionate pressure, at least, again, in the United States. So that's a specific thing to our culture. And I think it's healthier than just, it's kind of like, it's so much better to just go take a fencing class than to sit there and just try to tear everyone down around you all the time, you know? Because we have those instincts too. Like, we are human beings. You know, we were hunter-gatherers. It's who we are. So I just don't think that ignoring that part of our history or whatever, or providing zero outlets, or like hating on people who like sports or whatever, I just don't think it's productive, and I think it's dumb. And I think it is a toxic ritualistic thing. I'm just going to be honest. So anyways, that was a very long spiel. But again, I have to say a lot when it comes to Jameela. She's really saying a lot. Like, she's kind of giving me a run for my money here.
Out for 9 hours a day or whatever the fuck they were doing and eating low calories.
That being said, overtraining does exist. And I do think that The Biggest Loser did do that.
Work in the short term. But after 2 months, stressing your body like that because it's so unnatural can cause your cortisol levels, which are your stress hormones, to rise, which then means your insulin comes up to match your cortisol levels, and you can develop insulin resistance.
That's true. Cortisol and adrenaline is also anti-thyroid as well, so you can induce a hypothyroid state. So she is correct here.
Develop cortisol problems, adrenal fatigue, all of which explain why most of those people...
You'll become hungrier.
Most of those people gain the weight back and then some, not because they failed, not because they don't have like willpower, but because it's not only not sustainable, it's literally bad and damaging for your body in the long term. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think famously, I can't speak to the cortisol and insulin and all of that, but I can say that there was very famously a long-term follow-up study on people who were on The Biggest Loser, and they found that their metabolisms permanently downshifted by hundreds of calories per day, right? So they were, where previously they might have been burning a higher number of calories per day, now their metabolisms had downshifted by 600 or 800 calories per person.
Well, it's, in some cases it has to do with being a lower weight too. So I don't know if she just didn't frame that right, or she's trying to say it was metabolically or something like that. But again, nutrient deficiencies are real, and they're often just not addressed ever, especially with people that are within the TR. Like, if you talk to somebody who's within it or recovering, if they're like a haphazard recovery, it's like, you'll tell them, like, have you thought about vitamin A? They're like, what? What's retinol? Are you getting enough calcium every day? Huh? Iodine? Selenium? Magnesium? You know, you say these words and it's like, a TR person is like, what? And that's really like any of them. It's just wild.
Really sort of staggering numbers, and that damage appeared to be long-term, if not permanent. And that's a result of, you know, a TV show.
It's slower. It can take like a year or 2 years. I think of like really having restorative nutrition. Again, not 6. That's too long in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But Girl, Jameela, no.
That was demanded and celebrated by a culture that wanted to watch a thin person shout at fat people and tell them they were going to die if they didn't stay on that treadmill. Like it is both modeling a deeply damaging behavior internally, right? And modeling sort of like very near exercise addiction sort of levels, right? And also
People in the TR love to throw out on that word, don't they? It has a real meaning, honey. It's annoying. I think a lot of times when people say addiction, they mean obsession. It's so irritating. It drives me nuts.
so it was modeling how to
If you want to watch a TV show that has a very good example of actual addiction, I think Euphoria did it very well. As somebody I have experienced living with a parent who is an addict, that was a great example with Euphoria. Really, really good. Especially season 2. That was real. Oops. Oh my gosh.
to treat fat people.
Like Zendaya's performance was incredible. It was hard for me to watch even because it was so realistic. I was like, wow. That's addiction. Okay?
And while we all learned the internal lesson, we also kind of passively picked up some of the external lessons too, right? And picked up on this idea that really that is how fat people deserve to be treated, is that the loving thing to do for a fat person is to shout at them and tell them they're a failure and so on and so forth. I mean, it's really a brutalizing kind of logic.
No, it's about being able to find that fight within, which again, it wouldn't have worked for me. I've told you guys many times, but it does work for some people, and it's okay. If it works for some people, like, you're not a better or worse person if that style of training works for you or not. I do think that being able to find the inner fight within to get out of especially supermorbid obesity, I think it's something that people have to find within themselves. Absolutely. It's how you find the grit. And again, supermorbid obesity, it does not passively go away. It must be fought. It's tough. Tough as nails, regardless of what path you take, even if you're assisted or if you do it naturally. It's very difficult. And it requires some level of fight. But you have to keep a level head throughout that. You have to stay logical. You have to stay calculated. That's why I call it the super morbidly obese, the SMO Eras Tour. Think of how Taylor Swift was completely rehearsed. Everything was rehearsed and orchestrated. There was off season, on season, all that stuff. Everything is planned. There's not, so that way, it doesn't matter if you get broken up with or dumped or whatever, or if there's crazy stuff going on in the world, you keep it going. For my Astro girlies and boilies, it is Aquarius-like. Think of a metronome. Boom, 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 boom. It's Aquarian. You have to compartmentalize the journey, regardless of how you feel. It's tough. Very tough, but that's how you get out. It's very physical, too. So I think finding that fight within is a huge part of how I got out. And it's something that people had to figure out oftentimes on The Biggest Loser. Again, it's not always going to be super quickly or whatever. It doesn't have to be quickly, but you do have to develop that within. And people who get out and stay out, they develop that. That's also what The Witch represents on the channel, by the way. That survivalism, that grit, and that inner fight. It's important. It's really important. That's The Witch. The Witch, right here. It's important within supermorbid obesity.
Well, it's also
Aubrey doesn't have it, and look at her. She ain't getting out. And no, Aubrey, you're not a better person because you don't have an inner fight. You're not.
like a weird lineage of this narrative that fat people are stupid. stupid and lazy, but specifically stupid. So it's like everything has to be broken down to them like they are a stupid baby who doesn't.
That is a stereotype of super morbidly obese people. That I will agree with Jameela there. It is. People do assume that you're dumber when you're very big. I do agree with that.
Understand how to function in this world.
Yeah, I think the logic is basically like, you must not know, because if you knew, you wouldn't look like that, right? Is sort of the most sort of bald-faced approach to that, right? Is that I'm looking at you and I can see that you don't know how to be a thin person. You can look at me and see that I am a thin person, so let me teach you how to
I think within super morbid obesity, there is a feeling of like, oh my gosh, you really are out of control, or you really let it go crazy. So there is an element of infantilization of super morbidly obese people. There's an element of people viewing them as dumber. I was viewed as dumber, I would say, when I was super morbidly obese. Also, like the super morbidly obese person, again, you start to get into hypohaziness, the excessive estrogen from being so drastically big, which again, think about the physical state of being that big. You start to get hypohazy, so you develop hypothyroid symptoms. You have a hard time thinking clearly. There's a lot of like, everything is black and white. You have super rigid black and white thinking because your body's in a state of survival. There's so much adrenaline. You're basically running on adrenaline all the time because you're so inflamed. So there is a lot of like moodiness, irrational qualities to a lot of super morbidly obese people. It can be in varying shades, but it can get bad sometimes. So when you are that way too, and you're more volatile, then people also, they do infantilize you more and they don't take you seriously. And, it can be a self-fulfilling stereotype, basically. And the stereotype is there, you act in a way that reinforces it, and it kind of goes back and forth. So again, that's why it can be hard when you're no longer super morbidly obese to adjust to societal expectation, because they come back with a vengeance. Because all of a sudden it's like, well, you should know. When I was huge, it's like it didn't matter if I didn't know. People feel bad, or they're just like, oh my gosh, they're just like, so you get away with a lot too. So, and that can be a toxic ritualistic drive to stay that big for some people.
Be more like me, which the relationship message of that, I will say, as a fat person, it is such a deeply, profoundly, and pervasively dehumanizing thing to be looked at by most people as a fixer-upper. You know what I mean?
Full picture, yeah.
As a project, as like a fun little project for this person to sort of drop in.
That can happen even when you're thin or whatever. Like I'm sure if there are any guys out there who have had a crush on me throughout, maybe throughout the years, they'll see my hair and they'll be like, oh, if he could just fix his hair or something. It happens. It's like that can happen to you regardless of weight, Aubrey. It's like people feel that way a lot of times. And even within like heterosexual dating, there's kind of that trope of like the girl that's like a fixer. I could, even Taylor, she has a freaking song called I Can Fix Him. No, really, I can, So it just happens. It happens a lot to people in general. It's a phenomenon. That's not really a weight-related thing.
Been on and give me a bunch of weight loss advice that would almost certainly, at the very least weaken my relationship with them, at the very most trigger an eating disorder or a relapse, right? Like, it is, I think we have...
What did she even... I don't want to replay it because I don't want to play those words again. I missed that. I was thinking about something else. Let me go back.
So let me teach...
I swear, Aubrey.
...you how to be more like me. Which... The relationship message of that, I will say, as a fat person, it is such a deeply, profoundly, and pervasively dehumanizing thing to be looked at by most...
It is not dehumanizing. That is so stupid.
people as a fixer-upper.
Mm-hmm.
You know
As
what
a
I mean?
before picture, yeah.
As a project, as like a fun little project for this person to sort of drop in on and give me a bunch of weight loss advice that would almost certainly, at the very least weaken my relationship with them, at the very most trigger an eating disorder.
That is so
or a
stupid.
relapse,
She's so dumb. That's not true.
right? Like, it is, I think we have some cultural reckoning to.
You should be able to take some criticism, Aubrey, in any regard. So, are you able to take any criticism at all? You know, I ate a lot of sugar throughout my journey, but people criticized me for eating it. Did I freak out? Did I hate everybody who said something? No. Did I understand where the criticism was coming from? Yeah, I did. Did I factor it in? Yeah, I did. I kept a realistic expectation. You know, I'm like, got to make sure I'm getting some electrolytes, or I need to be aware that my electrolytes are probably lower because I'm having this sugar. There's a reason why people say it. You know, is it 100% black and white? No, it's not. But it's like, did it hurt me to hear people criticize it? No, it didn't. Again, it's a TR concept that because somebody said something, you immediately have to change. No, you don't. No. Why? Because it's not, your relationship should never be based upon your behaviors around consumption, period. That is super TR if you're on that level. And same thing with your self-esteem or social acceptance or whatever. That should not even be something that enters your mind. And I understand that it will because you have a mental illness, but you need to throw that in the trash. You need to pop that Pennywise red balloon immediately because that is complete bullshit. Absolute crap. So once that's thrown in the trash where it belongs, then you just see the conversation about food for what it is, which is not a big deal. Very low stakes, extremely low stakes. And you can take the feedback and the suggestion and be like, maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'll apply some of it here, maybe not. Or maybe I'll stay exactly the same and it won't matter. That's the normal response, Aubrey, for the record.
To do with that as our primary template for viewing fat.
Well, one of the things you do in your book, which I think is fucking vital, is you offer a little bit of advice for people when it comes to... You require for everyone to check in with themselves about their own bias, and you offer a little bit of information and, I don't know, some helpful tips for people when it comes to how to investigate where that urge comes from. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So each of the chapters in this book, it's called You Just Need to Lose Weight and 19 Other Myths About Fat People. Each of the chapters are pretty short and pretty direct rebuttals of very common myths about fatness and fat people. And many of them end with either action steps or sort of reflection questions for folks to think about where their biases come from. Where did you learn that you shouldn't say the word fat? Do you test that out with people? Do you ask them what they'd like to be called? How often are you calling people fat to their face? That seems like a rare occasion. Maybe knock that off, right? I would say a couple of the biggest things that come up as sort of repeated themes in those action steps and reflection questions are things about looking at your own relationships with fat people in your life and thinking about how often you ask for feedback. Are there ways that you could better show up for that person? Do they have feedback to deliver to you, right?
Yeah, so I would be very careful with that. Because if somebody is within the TR, honey. Woo! As somebody who used to be in it, if somebody asked me that, you look at that question with it's like a maniacal, like, ooh, this person's fucking stupid. I'm gonna try to control him. That's basically what that does. Which, it makes sense that she would try to spread that, because it makes it easier for those in the TR to try to control others. I would not suggest asking for feedback ever. I think that is so incredibly stupid, and it just invites extreme toxicity from the person in the issue. No, like when she said that, I thought of like 2014 Alex, 2013 Alex. Oh my God, I would have ran with that. Whew. Gosh. All it would be is the TR person will hear you say that and think this person's an idiot. I can control him. So if that's what you want, which again, people within the TR are already super controlling. So if you want to invite that kind of behavior and toxicity in your life, then go ahead and listen to that. That is not good advice. I will tell you.
Right. Another one is there are more sort of academic tools for assessing your own bias. The Harvard Implicit Associations test on body size is a decent way. It's a very quick, like just pull out your laptop or your iPad and take that test, see what you think. And that'll give you sort of an indication of when and whether you've got implicit bias leaning one way or another. And I think the last one is that, this shouldn't be the first or only book you read by a fat person about fatness, right? That sort of throughout the book.
So I think that as far as bias or whatever, I do think it is good to sort of question your emotional responses to fatness or fat people or whatever. You should feel pretty neutral or very muted. There shouldn't really be a huge response, because at the end of the day, a fat person is just a person. And so if you have particularly strong emotions, I think that that's probably not the best. I think it's probably better to just not have an emotional reaction to seeing a fat person for the sake of them, like solely because they are fat. Again, I understand like the sort of Angelica moment of, damn, like I understand that kind of thought. I do love the way that Angelica said that, because it's pretty real. But if it's that and then it's just gone in a second, I don't think that's a big deal. But if it becomes something that you're ruminating, obsessing, having very strong emotions about, and again, if those feelings are being turned upon yourself too, or if you see, like, for example, this is a good one. If you see a mid-sized person and you immediately have to compare yourself to them and you have this visceral emotional reaction, or it like triggers a sense of body dysmorphia within yourself, that's not good. So I would take that as a reality check of like, okay, I need to work on that. That's ridiculous. I shouldn't be comparing myself that seriously where I feel this kind of reaction over it. You shouldn't. So, but again, I'm not shaming you or whatever, but that does come from something and that can fester. So I would just definitely question that and try to like neutralize it, because what they never talk about is what actually starts the TR is an obsession with your body. And if comparison and that kind of stuff triggers that obsession within you, that's very caustic. That is negative. So that's where it's like, oh shit. Because that obsession can become behavior. And that's the way it shows up. Again, it doesn't happen just because you saw a fat person in the street. It happens because you're traumatized or you're extremely stressed. But that's how it starts, as an obsession with how you look, in particular when it comes to size. And like I said, so if you're seeing a fat person and you immediately compare. You're immediately like, oh my gosh, and it like causes an anxiety attack. You should never feel an anxiety attack over that. That's too far, in my opinion. If it's just a quick 1 second reaction and it's like, okay, whatever, and you move on with your day, that's fine. If it's nothing, that's probably even better. That's my opinion.
Book, there are a number of recommendations of other folks' work, and opportunities for folks to expand their understanding of fat experiences. Because boy, oh boy, I'm one person, right? And we live in a world that continues to, certainly journalistically, continues to regard thin people as the experts on fat people's experience, right? That when we see news stories,
That can be true. That can. I agree with her there. I think that, especially when I started, like I remember there's this one comment I never forgot, but they were like, you're acting like you're a different species because I was so big. I was like 350 pounds at 6'1" around that time. And they're like, you're acting like super big people are a different species. That's so stupid, blah, blah. And I literally was like, how can you not understand that being in this physical condition is going to change everything about your digestion, your metabolism, your mood, everything, especially at such an extreme level? So that was a huge activistic point that I fought about, and that does come from the idea that thin people somehow know more about a fat person. You know what I'm saying? When you haven't been there. Because it's not that common to be that big. And I think a lot of people think it is that common to be that big, and it's not. So at the time, I was trying to share some physical experiences. One, because I was out of the toxic ritualistic, so I would be honest about how awful it was, just because I think, and there were people who were going into the medical field and stuff like that obviously have not experienced supermorbid obesity, that I would never want them to experience it. But they were like, I'm taking this feedback. Like, I'm so grateful that you're saying this and you're talking about it, because it's like something like SIBO is super common in super morbidly obese people because they tend to have low stomach acid. So there's a lot of bacteria in the small intestines. So you can get very gaseous and have to, rush to the bathroom very often. And it makes your digestion pretty terrible. So it's harder to get nutrition. So again, that's where I was not as favorable towards huge amounts of fiber as a super morbidly obese person, because you can't take it very well. It's you probably should cook every vegetable you have, or if you're having carrots, you probably should cook it, that kind of stuff, because you don't have as strong a stomach acid. So because there is that idea that it's always better to have things not processed at all. And in a super morbidly obese state, sometimes it is better to have things, sometimes it's better to have applesauce rather than apples. I'll put it to you that way. Because your stomach is just not, your stomach acid is so weak. That's just one example. But it's you're really on another planet. I describe supermorbid obesity as another planet. And all that stuff, it's totally fixed at this point. So your digestion will get stronger as you normalize. I want people to understand that. So that can be fixed. And then now it's I am eating more fiber and stuff, and I was able to, it's totally different in 2025 versus 2023. It was totally different. You know what I'm saying? So things change. But yeah, those are just certain things that people don't talk about, because obviously a lot of people that are that big, they're toxically ritualistic. So they're always lying and saying how great they feel all the time,
About the quote unquote obesity epidemic. The people we see interviewed are thin people and doctors about why this is a problem. We don't actually hear from fat people, right? Mm-hmm. So it feels really worth, in our own media consumption, figuring out how to offset that and seek out more fat voices, because those aren't generally being lifted up for us.
You also offer the resource of giving fat people their own literal rebuttals as to, like, not even rebuttals, like the book in and of itself is a rebuttal, but you give them sentences that they can say, that you empower them to use, and you galvanize them to use when confronted with that, which is a fucking hard thing to do, by the way. Like, you've been body shamed, I've been body shamed, both to our faces. It's I don't know about you, but
pretty much everyone in the TR knows how to gaslight. I'll put it to you that way, especially if you're severe. I mean, it is very distressing if somebody says something about your body in that state, because you become extremely anxious. You could like have a panic attack over it, which people don't understand, like how delicate it can be, which I think is why like the Cardi B moment blew up, because she said like, wow, you guys sold out the 3X, you know, and she kind of made the joke or whatever, and it like really pissed people off. Like, it basically causes a panic attack in a TR person when you do something like that. So I think it's touching on a very sensitive, hot button place, that in a way that I don't think is very productive. I do think that there are certain hot button sensitive places, like you're in control. You're this way because you're making it this way. That might also freak out somebody, but that's more productive than just talking about their appearance. So I do think there are certain battles to be had with the toxic ritualistic person, but you got to choose your battles, you know? And I don't think that the appearance-based stuff, I think it's too distressing for hardly any benefit. That's why I see it. That's how I see it.
Just to like, when people would bully me to my face about my weight, I would start shaking. Yeah. I like, it's hard to stand up for yourself because you don't feel like society's got your back. Yeah. You don't feel like anyone's going to step in. When I would be called a racial slur, there was weirdly like I used to shake less because I knew it's likely that someone's going to step in. But when I had to defend my weight, when I had to defend my body, there was a part of me that didn't know if I was allowed. And I think that's where the shaking comes from, the shame and the not being sure, which I think a lot of us face. And what you do in this book is that you tell people that you...
I just think it's because one of them is a disordered aspect and the other one isn't. So I think her trying to frame it that way within, like, it's society rather than her viewing it differently. It's more of an internal thing, because it's kind of like, for those of you who don't understand it, you obsess over something all the time. So again, I had an obsession transfer to my car within my TR recovery. So let's talk about that as an example, just because it's safer for YouTube purposes. But let's say this is the feeling, or this is the mindset behind it. It's like, you get in your car, you turn on the car, you feel a vibration, you feel this, like, shh, and you're like, is that okay? Is that an okay vibration? And then your brain starts to hone in on any little sound, anything within the car, anything at all. So then it's like, I'm driving all day, I'm driving around, and I'm listening, and I'm hearing like a rattle in the engine. I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that. And I was so obsessed with it. And it's like a constant, like, daily thing of like, is my car going to be okay today? Is my car okay today? Is this going to be okay today? Is it going to be okay? Is it going to be okay? Is it going to be okay? Right? So you see the amount of time I was thinking about it. And it was totally neurotic and crazy, like, I'm not going to lie. But it wasn't dangerous for me to obsess over my car. It wasn't. Because it didn't affect my behaviors at all to think about the car. It just doesn't. But that's the quality of it. So it's like you become so obsessed with something, with your physical form, that it's like any little thing. I actually talked to some of you guys about this on Instagram when I watched The Substance. For anybody who's watched the movie The Substance, when Demi Moore was staring in the mirror and freaking out about her age, or like the difference between the younger version of her versus the real her or whatever, when she was looking at the real her in the mirror, that kind of obsession with it, that was so TR coded, basically. And it was almost like, even for me, like, it was a little tough to watch, honestly, even from like being this far into recovery. Even for me, I was like, whoa, like, obviously it didn't do anything to me at this point, but I almost wouldn't even suggest watching that movie if you're like fresh in recovery. It's a lot. But again, I don't think anything is sacred and blah, blah, blah. So, you gotta do what you gotta do. But it is a good example for somebody who hasn't had the problem. That level of like that scene specifically where she's looking at herself and she's like this and that. And it's just like, people don't understand how obsessed you are. It's like, I would get in my car and, like I said, every single shutter, every single noise, constantly like turning off the music, listening, rolling down the window, listening in silence, like then like putting it back up and then okay. And then that was the mental framework I was in when I did get in a car accident. And it basically like shattered my mind, which was fucking crazy, because it was like I was terrified of getting in a car accident. And it wasn't even a bad one at all. It wasn't. It was fine. Like it did cause cosmetic damage, blah, blah, blah. But it was, and I couldn't open one of the doors anymore. So it was an accident. But it was like my greatest fear was realized in that moment. And it totally freaked me out. And so it's kind of like when you say something to somebody about their body, or when they hear something like that, they're already so obsessed that it's that similar quality to when I was obsessed with my car and I got hit. That's basically like, I don't know if that can help you understand it, but that is what it's like. It's like a panic. It causes a sense of panic in a person. And I don't think people understand how deep it can run, But like, if I would have been, whenever I had to deal with something like that, especially prior to 2014, it was that same, like, it's like terrifying. I don't know how to describe it. And it is kind of delulu, and it's not good to feel that way, obviously. But I'm telling you, it is a thing.
Sure that it is unacceptable, and that you, Aubrey Gordon, have their fucking back.
Yes, absolutely.
You tell me some of those sentences someone should use, because it's the new year. Everyone's fucking thinks it's like it's hyper normalized to talk about everyone else's bodies and our own bodies, and it becomes body obsession month. It's a thinuary, essentially.
Yeah,
is what
totally.
Like we should rename it.
Totally.
Can you talk to me about some of those sentences? Just give me some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, so one of the big things that comes up is diet talk, or people recommending diets, is sort of a gentle way that people will, that they think of as gentle.
Yeah, so a person is going to have to deal with that within a TR recovery. It's something you're absolutely going to have to handle, because it will absolutely happen. So to set up an expectation that you're never going to hear something like that is actually insane. I think we're going to stop it here, because I think that she's going to get into something, and I feel like I've gone on for a while. So we'll catch up with this soon. I told you, I got a lot to say about them. I got a lot to say.